Hi, friends. We're going to be talking about negotiations. How often are you given an inquiry from someone and they're like, I would like 8 hours of photography, two photographers, complete set of JPEGs, two albums, and my budget's $1,000. And you might think, forget about it. I don't want this client. I'm not even going to touch it. There's no way they can afford me. Or you think, gosh, oh my gosh, I have to lower my packages to get this because I need every client I can get. None of this is true, right? Don't throw away this inquiry. It is all about listening, educating, and adjusting. These are the three things that we're going to talk about. Okay, so we're going to talk about negotiating. And negotiating is not about winning and losing at all. Negotiating is about finding that perfect sweet spot, finding that place where you and your hopefully brand new client are super happy, where they feel like they've gotten a package that is perfect and customized for them, and they get what they pay for plus some. They feel like both people should feel like they win at the end of a negotiation. True negotiation would be great when both people in the end feel great. And that's what this is about, is creating that perfect sweet spot package. So a few things you should think about before you start the conversation. You want to know your bare minimum, right? Because you want to do this also before you get on a call or before you do an email, because all of the things we're talking about right now might sound like you have to do it face-to-face in a call or on a Zoom call or in a meeting, but actually it can also be done via email. It's a little harder, but you can still do it. So all of the things we're about to talk about should be done before you reach out, before you start the negotiation, or before you start creating these custom packages to meet their requests, right? One, you want to know your bare minimum. Now, your bare minimum of what you need in the transaction, in the wedding, in the package. Now, remember, that's not always money in cash, okay? So look at the client coming through and look at the venue and look at the location and look at your life, right? For example, like, is it connections? That's worthy, right? If you're working with specific vendors or a specific clientele you've really wanted to break into, that's worth. Look at the exposure. Is your work going to be shown in places that it wouldn't usually be shown? Look at your portfolio. Are you going to be getting more photos that you need, especially if you're trying to change a brand or build a brand or do in a different location? Does this match what you're looking for? Is it a specific location that just appeals to you? Have you always wanted to photograph a barn wedding and this is a barn wedding? Or have you always wanted to do a destination wedding and this is a destination wedding? And then just plain fun. Is it fun? Is it going to be a fun time in your wedding? And all of these can be considered a value point and a value aspect for you. So first, that's the first thing you want to do, is what is your bare minimum? What is the bare cash value? Number two, you want to talk about finances. You want to talk about your overhead, right? So you want to know your bottom line and what do you need to do to financially cover this potential photo shoot to make it work. And if you don't reach it, can you get value from it from other ways, like we just talked about, to make it worth it? So some of those line items you want to look at when you're thinking about what your overhead is per shoot, because sometimes it's hard to break down what your overhead is in your business when so many of the financial investments we make in our business are like monthly expenditures. They're not really based off each shoot. But this at least gives you some level of awareness. You want to look at travel time, gas, hotel, any of those. That you want to look at, like, if you have to rent special equipment rental, editing. If you have an editor, how much is that editing cost per shoot? And then, like, time is money. So is this photo shoot taking you away from a client who would be able and willing to pay a higher price? So what is the time value for you as well? That's a big one. For example, if it's my off season and it's my off season, I know I'm not going to be shooting something anyways, but I want to kind of get the exposure, I want to get the practice, or I want to get the value from it somehow else. That's why a lot of times people want to try to get married in off season, is because they know more people can win-win in this situation, right? So then the third thing you want to do is ask yourself, how much do you want this client, right? From what you've seen so far, how much do you want it? Like, Do you connect with them on a personal level? Is there something really creative and interesting with them? Does it get you excited? And in your mind, rank it. At this point, before you've even talked, rank it in your mind from a scale of 1 to 10, how much you want this client. And that's going to give you a number range of how hard you're going to work to make these packages work for them, right? So let's say it's a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, oh my gosh, I have to book this client, and 1 being like, oh God, I don't even want this client. Well, I'd say personally, if it's a 3, 2, or 1, and you're not too worried about your business and your finances and you don't need the client, say no right away. You might not even want to waste time on doing one of these big negotiation calls. Now, if it's a 7, 8, 9, you're going to want to really listen hard, which brings me to part 2 of this whole conversation. And that is, now that you know what you need and want, what is it that the client? So it's your job to kind of create a space that feels comfortable for them to understand and not know. You want to create a space where you're educating your client on what it is they may not know in a very nice, kind way. Photography has so many different aspects, and if all they do is read online or all they do is know what their best friend told them, it's not going to be geared towards them. So your job is to educate, but you want to educate to them specifically, right? You don't want to tell them what you want to tell them, which is everything, right? Because remember, you're the expert in this field. But you want to tell them what they personally and specifically need to hear. Now, there's a few things specifically you can do to help guide this conversation. 1, ask them questions, obviously. You're going to ask them questions to figure out what's most important to them from the beginning, before you even talk about money, packages, any of that stuff. And even before you really talk about what you have to offer, because you want to make this client know that they're priority, not you, right? This isn't about you. This is about them. So you want to ask them questions to figure out what their baseline is. You want to know not just where they're coming from as far as baseline, meaning their price. You want to know where they're coming from their education level, like what's important to them and where they got what they're thinking, where they gather their information, right? So the first thing you want to hear is you want to ask them to describe their ideal photography experience, right? Like, oh my gosh, I imagine having 2 photographers and a videographer following me around everywhere, making me feel like the paparazzi, like I'm a queen on that day. Or, I really just want some simple, beautiful photos of candids, or I want some posed specific. So as you're helping them imagine their ideal photography situation, ask them questions. What do the flowers look like? Are you holding them? What's your dress like? This also helps them imagine the photography with you personally in the picture, right? So it's kind of a psychology thing. And then that gets them excited, and it gets them to imagine what they want, not what someone else is telling them or what they are reading. This is telling them what they want, what they feel. And they're going to start having like a tactile experience with you, but also understanding photography, that anything is possible, okay? Then you want to ask them specifically about their photos. Like, what specific photos do you really imagine wanting or hanging on your wall? Now, when you're talking about hanging photos on your wall, you're also giving them that visual of having a home that has their weddings printed and hanging on the wall, which again gives them that imagination and feeling about what it's going to be like to have their wedding photos, how important they're going to be with them, and then starts planting the ideas of buying and printing prints in the future, okay? Which personally, I love it. And if you're a person who doesn't believe in prints and albums and stuff, don't do this, because you want this to be 100% authentic. But for me, I love it. I love having prints. I love having my clients have their pictures. When I walk into my former client's home and I see their pictures hanging on the wall, it makes me so excited. So not only do you want to understand what's important to them, it also helps you narrow down what photos they really want. So you want to know, for example, if they sit there and say, I really can't wait to have photos of me getting ready in the spa, cheersing with champagne, and they talk a lot about these types of photos, but then they don't even mention the reception and dance, this is where you know what's important to them and what's not. This is where you can start to imagine what their packages could have to look like. They might want 8 hours of photography, but if they're not even mentioning photos of the dance floor, it's not that important to them, okay? And when you go back and talk about packages, you can circle back and mention this. So now you want to talk about why they want these specific things included. Where did they get their baseline? Did they get it from Pinterest? Like, so you mentioned that you want 8 hours of photography. Why is it that you want 8 hours? And if they can't give you an answer, you know this is a point where you can kind of create packages that might be more suitable for everybody, okay? So now it's time to put it all together, all right? What you want, what they want, and what the ideal package includes, okay? So, of course, in an ideal world, this is going to be perfect, right? They're going to name the ideal package of what they want, and they're going to have the perfect budget that fits it. But if this were the case, you guys wouldn't be watching this video, and I wouldn't be having to make this video because there would be no negotiation needed. This is the package, this is the price, I'm going to pay it, done. And this does happen, of course, once in a while, but oftentimes it doesn't, especially, and here's the thing, circling back to like the client who comes in and says, I want A, B, C, D, and E, and I want it for a quarter of the price. They're saying that because they don't know. They don't know what they need. They don't know what the average amount of expenditure is. And most likely, this is most likely their first wedding, potentially their second wedding. So who knows more about weddings in this scenario? You. And you got to remember that, especially when you go into this confidently, and especially if your goal is truly to be a win-win for everybody. Okay? Because you want everyone to feel good. You don't want to feel like anyone got taken advantage of on either side. So now let's talk about how to create that win-win package. First, you're going to look at their budget. You're going to see if there is any package you can offer that actually hits their budget, right? So let's say their budget is a little bit lower than what you really usually would offer for what they're asking. That's okay. Right now we're just seeing, is their budget level something you can be okay with? Like, let's say their budget is $2,000, but you usually have a budget that's higher than that. Is there something there that you're like, I can make something there work and feel good about it? And if not, that's okay. But just kind of know in your mind where you're looking, right? Then you want to look at what they want. Where can you offer less where they won't necessarily feel it, right? Like, again, let's go back. I think 8 hours is a good example. So like if someone wants 8 hours, but they don't really need 8 hours, they can really get away with, say, 4 hours because they're having a small wedding. And that's the thing too. You have to explain that oftentimes when you look online and you look for average wedding, blah, 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 it's for 100+ people and full day coverage, where if the person coming to you right now has 30 people, then you don't really need to offer that. So the way you want to find out what their budget is, actually, I should have talked about this a little bit earlier. First off, you want to ideally know what their budget range prior to even having this conversation. But sometimes you don't have that opportunity. So you want to know what the budget range is before you really start going into this. Because if they're coming in and they're going out, my range is $800 to $1,000, you know you're going to have to do some certain level of education. Or potentially all of a sudden this client becomes a 1, 2, or 3, and you're like, I don't even have time and energy to put in this because I'm already like, let's say it's the busiest day of the year, and you're like, it's not worth it. You kindly say no, or you offer them some other suggestions, right? Other photographers, always kind. Then you want to find out, what is their range? Now, the reason you use the word range is because even though people say a budget, and my budget is below this or at this, when you use the word range, it opens up. It also realizes and gives the sense of like, this is flexible. There's going to be options in here. And it also helps you then give several options, right? Because you're looking at their range. So let's circle back again. Let's go back to now you're doing this package. You've got their budget range. You've got what they want. You've got what you need. Now, how do you put it all together? Look at what their ideal package is and what they mentioned that they wanted. 8 hours, complete set of JPEGs, 3 albums, blah, 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 right? Now you pull back and go, what is what they actually need, right? For example, they're sure they need the complete set of JPEGs and 3 albums. Ask them again why. Why do they need this? Because Maybe they include one of the items in the wedding package and they book some of it later. Or maybe instead of having the complete set of JPEGs, they just have a limited amount of JPEGs. And you can show that, like, if you just have 20 JPEGs, how many pictures are you actually going to print, right? Or you can always purchase later. Or, for me, I offer a discount on the complete set of JPEGs after the wedding, so you can tell them that there's this incentive. Like, there's options. Nothing is carved in stone, right? This is to get them on the calendar and for them to check photography off their list and to book one of their favorite vendors of the day, right? Another good example while you're doing this, because they're going to maybe feel like you're just taking things away, is to give examples of what other wedding packages would look like, right? So offer timelines, offer sample products, give stories about other clients so they know what you're offering will actually work. Like, again, when people come in and say they want 8 to 10 to 12 hour coverage, all day coverage, because again, they don't know. They think they might want that, but they don't know. That's when it's a good time for you to say, you know what, I did this wedding and this is what it looked like, and it was 6 hours. And it was great because, after the dance party, people don't need all that coverage anyways, and you don't want to pay me to be wasting time while I'm standing around. If you have me come earlier in the day and leave earlier, you get more value for your dollar because I'm there taking more pictures when other people aren't. Like, there's a lot of ways to explain how these smaller packages work just as well. This is basically how the 3 different packages to offer would break down. First, you've got their dream package. Everything they want. Most likely, this is also going to be more than the budget they listed. And show it. Just straight out show that package and that price. So then they see the value of everything, okay? The next package is your ideal package for them. So this might be a little bit outside their budget, but you really like it, right? So let's say it's less products, but some products. And it's less hours, but enough hours they need. Like, obviously you want to make sure that there's a little bit beforehand, a little bit ceremony, the formal portraits and the reception covered, but maybe it's not tons of reception and maybe it's not tons of getting ready. So it's a micro version. But still at the end, they have enough photos to show an album to tell the story of their day, okay? So this is where it's your ideal package. You're getting the price that you need based on what you thought about before you even had this conversation, and they're getting what they need, right? Then the third package is the one that you want to try to create that is close or below, ideally, even if it's just a little below their budget, or at least near their budget. It might include a lot less, but it will cover what they need as far as hours go, and very little product. So this at least shows to your potential client, I hear you, let's be real, I want to create something that's in your budget. I am going to try to meet this. Because then they're going to feel heard and like you're listening to them and you're giving them an option that is their budget, and you're customizing, which makes them also feel special. No one wants to be cookie cutter, especially with their wedding. You've got the dream package, but it's kind of the reversed. It's like the client's middle philosophy thing. You've got the dream package, which is all the things which is probably outside their budget. You've got the middle package, which is the ideal situation you think, because you're the expert, for them, which is just enough that they need to be good enough. They're not going to miss what's not in the dream package, and if they really do, they can add it on later. And it's the price that you need. And then there's the small package, which is their budget, which says, I hear you, I listen to you, this is what you need, I got that, I'm going to offer that for you. But it might be a lot less than what they need. Like, it might not include any, like, for example, my basic package only includes one JPEG and $100 print credit. But this is enough to then discount the complete set of JPEGs later if they want it. And they have one JPEG to do thank you cards or print their favorite photo. It just doesn't give you a ton. So it's more of the a la carte later that hopefully they get money from their wedding, they have guests who are offering. Well, if someone comes in and sees this basic package on the bottom and goes, can you do this, but can you do it for less? I can't do it for less, but what I can do is add a couple, you know what though, I'll take the bottom package, which is the price you've already agreed you can do, which is their budget, but maybe add 5 or 6 extra JPEGs, right? This is where it's your job to really think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want this wedding? And this is the point you book it. So let's talk about your tools in your toolbox. This is where you have extra things you can add that can add value to your photography. And the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more options you have to offer your client, the more value you can give them, the more things they might not even know they think they need or want, but it makes them feel again that they're getting a win. They're getting what they want plus some. By tools, I mean print credits, whether it's 25, 50, 100, 200, 300. Now, print credits are a great way to add value, especially if you're using an online gallery, because let's say it's a $100 print credit. To them, it's a $100 value. But to you, it's your out-of-pocket cost is $25, $30. So is that worth clinching the deal? Because then all of a sudden, with a $100 value, they can get more JPEGs, they can get more prints, it adds more product value, right? But it's not you giving away everything. Albums are another way to do it. If you have a basic album, that's great. Do a basic album. There's a good chance that later when they start to build their album after the wedding, they're going to want to add on and make it a little bigger. So that cost is covered as well. Extra photographers. 2 photographers. So maybe shorten the amount of hours, but give them 2 photographers. Hours of coverage. If you especially are on a net, if you edit your own photos, your hours of coverage is a pretty low overhead. So adding extra hours is a huge value point. But you want to make sure you don't give too much when you're giving too many hours. But again, this is after you've had a conversation, after you realize that they really want you and you feel valued, and they're at that, on the scale of 1 to 10, they're on the upper higher level number, right? You really want this wedding. This is what you're looking at. And extra photo shoots. They want an engagement session. They want an anniversary photo shoot, a boudoir, extra coverage for the day before. Like, there's a lot of ways, instead of just going, yeah, I'll lower my package and give you 10% off, you can go, I'm going to meet you here, but I'm going to give you this instead. And then they're going to go, wow, she's really trying to work with me, okay? Then, at the end, when it comes down to it, and let's say it didn't happen, that's okay. Because sometimes it really isn't it just isn't a good fit. And it wasn't meant to be, and they weren't meant to be your client. Listened, right? You listened to them. You offered useful information. And most often, even if it doesn't work out, if you had this authentic, great conversation, both people walk away feeling good. You didn't undervalue your services. You explained what you needed to. You educated them. And they most likely walked away understanding more about photography, understanding more about the wedding industry, and understanding more about what they really want and need for their photography. So in the end, it still became a win-win, even if the package didn't work out. And also, every time you do this, you have a different conversation with the client, because every wedding is different and every wedding is going to have different needs and wants. And you start to understand more and more how to listen and how to expand your offerings and how to tweak and make the packages better for everybody. So that is my tips and tricks about negotiating, and I hope it was super helpful.